Measure B was a well-intentioned attempt to address the problem that we all agree is here, the criminal commercial grows, but it doesn't do the job. It is a false solution. And in fact, it does more harm than good. And the people that are going to be affected by B are the very people who live here and who do it responsibly and legally, and that's us. I guess I want to address, did Measure G open the floodgates to the world and say, come here and grow the most marijuana you can, make a lot of money, and bring this criminal element in? And I just want to mention that Mendocino County does not have the most marijuana in the state we're coming for. In 2007, the CAMP statistics, as a campaign against marijuana planting, Lake County is number one. And Lake County does not have Measure G. They default to the county guidelines. I just want to turn it over to Peter.
Thank you. I am honored to be here. 8 years ago, the people of Mendocino passed Measure G, a personal use ordinance that decriminalized the possession of fewer than 25 cannabis plants. This was very pleasing to me because I strongly believe that I had a right to the pursuit of happiness that was guaranteed to all of us by the founders of our nation. I feel strongly that I own my own body and should be allowed to use whatever herbs I choose without government interference. I appreciate and am grateful to the people of Mendocino for giving me back that freedom. Last year, after a 7-year wait, Measure G was finally codified into the County Law Code, Chapter 9.36. We really should give it an opportunity to work and not reverse it immediately as the Measure B alarmists would have us do. Let's be clear. Chapter 9.36 did nothing to encourage commercial criminal cultivation and is clearly limited to growing less than 25 plants. Large-scale cultivation, trafficking, and sale remain illegal as they always have been. In fact, Measure B encourages commercial growing because it will be diverting law enforcement resources to arrest small growers, when really the police should be focusing on the large-scale criminal operations abundant in our county. The small growers, the low-hanging fruit, is irresistible to law enforcement because they are peaceful and easily handcuffed. But really, we need the police to target the hardened criminals. Decriminalization of personal use, which we have achieved in Mendocino, frees up police resources to deal with more serious crime, but Measure B would reverse that.
Okay, let's go back to the yes on Measure B. This is a question that came in from an audience member, and I'd like you to be specific about the details of the measure because the audience needs to know exactly what B does in relationship to repealing G. If you can be specific, gentlemen. How will Measure B make Mendocino County safer?
Well, I think one of the main things is Measure B will make Mendocino County safer by providing consistency in the law. Sheriff Allman has previously stated that a lack of consistency is the real problem. We now have Measure G, which is poorly written, it's internally inconsistent, it's probably illegal, and yet that has become the guiding principle for medical marijuana in Mendocino County. Measure B repeals Measure G, which was bad law to begin with, and is also a failed experiment. We heard in the opening argument from the No on B that we should give Measure B a chance to work. Well, we actually know how that experiment turns out. We passed it in the year 2000. We've seen the results. We don't need more knowledge of that. Measure B simply repeals G and puts us back in line with the state limits. The state limits provide for the needs of any medical marijuana patient. It's curious also that No on B says marijuana is the #1 cash crop. I thought it was about medicine. If it's about medicine, how did it become the #1 cash crop? So Measure B protects the rights of medical marijuana patients and discourages commercial growing.
Okay.
I got 30 seconds, according to the stopwatch here. According to Sheriff Paul Allman, an important element of law enforcement is voluntary compliance. Of course, voluntary compliance is only possible when laws are consistent within themselves and with other laws. I mean, if you want to get voluntary compliance, it don't work really great when you're not sure which law to comply with because the two conflict. And certainly, state law is superior to Measure G.
Right?
Thank you. When Mr. McGowan says that Measure G is probably illegal, that's kind of perplexing to me because it was legally passed and incorporated into the Mendocino Code. And if he thinks it's illegal, why isn't he acting through the courts to kind of demonstrate that it's illegal instead of putting it through a forced-through voter proposition? If it's illegal, as he says, then that's what the courts are all about. Second, there's confusion about medical marijuana and Prop G. Prop G is not about medical marijuana. It's about personal use for anybody. You don't need a doctor's recommendation in order to want to use marijuana in Mendocino County if you're cultivating using less than 25 plants. So it's not just about medical patients. The medical patients are clearly illegal if they have the doctor's recommendation. Prop G expands that to say really anybody in the county should be allowed to use marijuana, whether it's for medical purposes or not, whether it's supported by their doctor now, just by virtue of being a free citizen in America.
I do want to say that Measure G is not a failed experiment. Measure G is working, and Measure B did not invite criminals here and change the entire culture of the county. And I want to get back to this, just some of the data, so it'll give you a feel. If the #1 county in the state in terms of plant seized is Lake County, with 482,775 plants, and we come in 4th with less than half of those plants seized. Lake County, as I mentioned, does not have as generous as a guideline as we do. Why do they grow so much more marijuana and have so many more marijuana plants seized? Looking at Santa Cruz, which does have maybe the most generous guidelines in the entire county, they come in 11th. So, did Measure G fail? No. I'm proud of Measure G. I think it makes it consistent and fair for everybody in the county and protects us, the residents.
Rebuttal. As a matter of fact, personal use is not legal now. The only use of marijuana that is legal in the state of California is with a doctor's recommendation. So personal use will not be legal with or without Measure B because a local measure cannot overrule state law. In fact, if personal use was legal now, why do so many healthy young people get medical marijuana cards? They do so to, quote, legalize their personal use. Ross, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, if I can find my notes fast enough. I wanted to say that it was strictly to codify Measure G was strictly an ministerial function and had nothing to do with whether or not it was legal. Like that was a discussion I had with Janine Nadell this afternoon.
No?
We're not allowed to do that?
Well, is it necessary? Can we go on? Another question? I mean, we're getting
No,
there.
it's the answer.
Yeah, take a minute. Go on. Take a minute.
I just want to address, John, the issue of who's medical and who's not, and people, I think that you were sort of alluding to the fact that people hide and pretend that it's medical and that it's indeed personal. And I really feel like we're not going to be able to judge by looking at somebody if they're not in a wheelchair or crutches who has a medical condition. Do you know what my medical condition is? Do I know what your medical condition is? What does that look like? And as Keith Fuller mentioned in another radio, what does Crohn's disease look like or diabetes?